We're here today to talk a little bit about resources that we have available for the 2021 school year. And we'd like to, I think, first start off by just saying that if you have questions, we would prefer that you use this tiny URL that is on the screen now. You can also find it in the chat. Somebody will post it in there. We will answer a number of questions as we go through, but if you are feeling that you need to get a question answered, we've already covered that topic, you can go ahead and use this URL to get those entered. And if you'd like us to get back to you, you can provide your email address. We will send out some answers to these questions and others in the next week or so as we get around to answering them. We will record this and we will make sure that we email all of the registered users for today's session so you can have that. If you'd like more information on other sessions, you can find those on our PL calendar. We do have a number of additional ones coming up for other grade levels later this month. As we go through today, it's 4 o'clock here on Pacific time, so hopefully for many of you, this is your final Zoom call of the day. Try to make it enjoyable. We're going to kind of have just a brief welcome, and then we're going to go over some resources. First, some resources in getting started for those of you that may be working with new teachers, or if you're a new teacher yourself, some tools that we've made available to help people get started, as well as I think what most of you are here for, kind of some new resources that we have developed for this fall, given that instruction is going to likely look different for many people today. First, I'd like to start off just by saying thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. I think thank you for just undertaking this task. It is quite tender times right now, and we know that a lot of us are being pulled in many different directions, and so thank you for being here. Thank you for your dedication to science, and I think for most of for our FOSS staff, I'd like to say thank you for just what you do for students, especially now working with the younger ones in K2. They're really teachers such an important part of what they look forward to every day. So we're going to try to provide you with some tools to help you make this an enjoyable and meaningful experience for everyone. So I'd like to kind of start off by sharing a little story of my art class back in 5th grade. I was tasked with given a bar of soap to carve that into a goldfish. And this was something that I thought I could give it a good shot. I had some experience using pocket knife and carving some wood, but soap was new. But I tried my best and took some tools that I was given and started to work on it. I was really motivated to get this fish to look the best I could, because somehow in the 80s they managed to convince somebody that the winning fish would get their fish carved out of ice by somebody with a chainsaw, which at the age of 6 was, or I'm sorry, in 6th grade was a pretty cool thing for me. So I took the tools and I started to work with them. And when I'm given tools that look like this, some of them looked a little familiar for me. Some of them were new. I wasn't sure how to use all of them. I could use some of them, but it took me a while to get used to some other ones. I'd like to say that I carved an amazing fish out of a bar of soap and went on to win, but I did not. I'd also like to say that I continued my soap carving, but also no. But the point is that we all are given tasks to do sometimes, and sometimes we're handed new tools. And sometimes we don't know where those tools have come from, whether they come from our district, whether they come from our science curriculum, whether they come from a teacher next door. We get tools from different places. But as educators, we take the tools that we have, even the ones that we feel comfortable with and uncomfortable with or new to us, and we try to learn how to use those the best we can so we can make the best instruction that we possibly can, given what we have to do. So much like me in sixth grade, you know, that first bar of soap was not terrific. And after a couple trips to the store to get some more soap, I put something together that I was proud of. And so give yourself permission and time to learn how to use these tools and present kind of the best fish you can. So one of the tools that we'd like to start off with is how to get familiar with the program. So in this, we have first-time users, whether it's yourself or a colleague that you work with. They're not quite sure how to get started. Frequently, there's training that goes along, but if you have not been able to attend that, we have some good places that you can start. If you go to FOSS Web right now, you don't even have to register. You can click on a little box up top that says Implementation Tools. And then Implementation Tool menu will pop up, and there's a number of supporting things that are there. But one of the good ones to start with is the Getting Started with FOSS videos. So that will take you to a page that looks like this. It's a little hard to read, so I'll zoom in on a few of these things. There are a number of things that you can go through, and most of these are listed on the frequently asked questions. Things like FOSS Web walkthrough videos, how to set up your page or your site. We'll get a little bit more into that. You know, guidance on how to review your investigation guide. So you can look at it online. I'll show you how to get to those. And also this last one, which is a new resource that we created last fall, but some of you might not be familiar with it. It's a list of introductory videos that were filmed last fall, and I'm just going to show you a snippet of one of these. So if you're just getting started with the program, you're not quite sure what this might look like in classrooms or how you might work with different strategies throughout the program, these videos are a good resource for that. So I'm going to try to play this, and I'm going to get to good part. Fantastic kindergarten teacher doing
this one is the word for
like
through. Can you show me through? Through. So I'm going to put through right here because this one looks like it's going through the tunnel. This one is above. Can you say that? Where does above go? Can you come show me? Way up high. Thank you. Yes. Above. Through the tunnel. So should we find the word through? Let's go find the word through. Two direction words. Which one do you think is through?
Science writing can be...
And there's some narration that kind of goes along with that as well. How cute are those kids? Really just adorable. But fantastic work in there. So there's a lot of videos that go through that can kind of show you different aspects of the program, notebooks, language development, you know, teachers in action working with students. So those are teacher resources introductory videos. Once you've kind of become familiar with the program, the next thing that we recommend is that you get set up on FOSS Web. And for many of you, if you've got classes set up in the past, it's still a similar process. But there's a few different ways that you can log on. So what we recommend that you do is if you go to Updates and Help, you'll find a little drop-down menu with FOSS Web walkthrough videos. So these walkthrough videos, and this is also in the frequently asked questions document, there's a number of videos that are here that are meant to help you as a teacher kind of get started with setting up FOSS Web, how to use it, how to get your students logged on to it, whether you are a self-registered teacher, or whether you're a district-registered teacher. If you're not sure the best place to go is to actually talk to somebody in your district, a fellow teacher, an administrator, maybe a tech person, to find out if you're self-registered or district registered. And there are some supports along the lines for those. A few that I want to draw your attention to. The webinars that we're doing this summer will actually go here in this kind of bucket here. And there's kind of a number of videos down here at the bottom that are really good, kind of that first time through as you work with students on FOSS Web. So those are good places to start for FOSS Web. This is an example of what a particular module will look like. Once you get signed in, you'll have to enter something that's called an access code. And there's directions on that previous page on how to do that. But there are a few other places that you can go to start. One is there's the e-guide. So it is basically a digital version of the print guide that you have there. That is a good place to go. As well as, actually this should be up just a little bit. These teacher prep videos are profoundly helpful the first time through, so it can kind of help you get a sense of what the materials are and how to put those together and how to use those with students. The final thing that's also helpful for getting started is there's some teaching slides for each of the modules that are there. And those are meant to be student facing, so those are meant to be displayed for students, and those are available in English and in Spanish. Here's one from Aaron Weather, and I think in just a little bit, Deanna is going to show you some more of those slides from Aaron Weather. But those are good places to start. If you are part of a district that is using single sign-on, Clever or ClassLink, there is kind of a special URL that you can use to contact the success team if you are need some support in setting that up. District person's also a great person to talk to. We're finding that many districts kind of have their own little nuances that exist for their district, so please make sure you check with them as well. There is FOSS Web for students as well. In K2, some students might log in through their single sign-on, others might log in through a class account. There's more information about how to set those up in those help pages. But when students need some support, or families need some support when they sign in, they can go back to the help thing, and there's a little tab that's called website help. And this is a good place to go when you need website help. But one of the things that we do have here is some very specific resources for students and parents if they need some support in navigating FOSS Web, how to find the resources that you're using this fall, and kind of troubleshooting some things. So these are things that you can send a link to families, and there's some videos on how to log into FOSS Web, so it kind of, students can watch that and get logged in. You will, as a teacher, need to provide them with some login information as they do this. There's also some interactive student ebooks, so they are basically the print books, but they are in electronic form that, you know, it has some text to speech and it has videos that go along with those. We call those ebooks, and there's a tutorial video for how to get those set up for families as well. We do have, or there will be coming, a letter that can go home to families that explains some of the resources and how to access them that could be coming home. So this is an example of one. These are coming soon, so we are still in the process of developing these, but they are meant for families, and they have some links in them and things that you can share with them. So I just want to pause for a second. I need to check in with our team that's kind of keeping an eye on the chat questions. This also gives you an opportunity to think through the tools that you have teachers that you might be started with, what do they need support with? And just kind of pause for a second while I check in with the team. Okay, so I'm hearing from the team that there are some questions that are coming around notebook sheets and things like that, which we'll get to as we progress through this. So I'm going to carry on. So this is currently what the air and weather module looks like on FOSS Web. There are a number of kind of categories here: teaching the module, materials, teacher resources, and digital-only resources. But there's some new tabs that are coming online now. And one of them is this tab that's called Fall 2020 Teaching FOSS. It's a good place for you as a teacher to start to find your resources that are coming this fall. This is still under development, much like the rest of the world. We are working as hard as we can to make things run as smoothly as possible for students and teachers and districts. And we are hustling. So one of the things that when you click on this, you will get two new tabs. It's a little blurry because this is not live yet, so this is just a picture. The first one we're going to talk about is this Designing Your FOSS Instruction in Grades 1 through 2. So this document, which should be available either this Friday or shortly afterwards, kind of is a document that talks through a number of different resources. So it is a good place for teachers to start. It kind of talks through some of the things that was shared already in this resource or this webinar about getting started, how to log on to FOSS Web, and so on. But it also talks a little bit more about some particular approaches for this fall. We have a number of districts that we are working with, and everyone's approach is slightly different. So we're going to have some districts that may be doing some instruction in person, and they need specific recommendations about how to manage materials, manage students and materials, how to conduct sense-making discussions, kind of given all of the recommended guidelines. This is not meant to replace anything that comes from your district. It is meant to work with the guidelines that are in your district. So some specific recommendations for in-person learning, as well as synchronous. So synchronous learning, we define as instruction that happens when teachers and students are paying attention to the same thing at the same time, whether that be a screen, whether that be reading. There's something that you're all doing those in sync. So some specific recommendations for things that we need to think about from a science standpoint, or even just an instructional standpoint when we think about instructional resources or supports for students when we're doing synchronous learning. Many students in the spring logged on to things like Zoom to watch teachers or videos or things like that, which might be viewed as a synchronous resource. So some guidelines or some recommendations for that around things like setting up your physical environment. Even though the circumstances have changed in terms of where you're standing when you deliver instruction, some of the resources are still needed. They still are there to support students, so you can see some visuals of those. And Deanna, and you'll see kind of the actual, some of these things in progress as she uses those. But that's something that we really want teachers to think about as they go forward. You need to set up the physical space. The other is the tech setup. So in that document, there are some links to some resources about setting up technology from, that starts with just one camera, such as a laptop, and how to construct things that way. And those of you that maybe like to get a little bit more techie, some additional things where you can work with that. So those are there in that tab. So those should go up hopefully the end of this week. There's a 3.5 document for that as well. That some similar information, but there are some subtle differences between K2 and 3.5. The other document is what we refer to as a navigation matrix. And the navigation matrix is one where we are working on that as quickly as we can, and it will be a very organic document for a while. That being, here's an example of one. This is from Air and Weather. This is a draft. I'll kind of go through and we'll talk through these columns, and Deanna's going to show you some examples of strategies using these. So the first column, you have the information about the investigation and the part, but since everyone has a variety of different approaches they might take, and you might even change partway through the year, there are some in-person specific recommendations that we need to make for each part. If students are working in partners, in-person learning, not going to be able to do that, so we need to have specific kind of modifications that are done so that can be done safely. So when we have those, we're going to list those here in this in-person learning resource. This central kind of chunk is around synchronous resources. So again, synchronous is things where teachers and students are attending to the same task at the same time. So we have these divided up into kind of steps for instruction, materials, and that for teacher, and then materials for students. I'll talk a little bit about this, but then I want Deanna's going to show you what this looks like from this particular lesson. I am hearing a little bit of background noise, so I'm not sure where that's coming from. In this particular one, we've got some steps for introducing the experience, a step for the activity, and some steps for discussion. And the discussion is really crucial in this point in time, and Deanna will model that with one of the lessons you'll see. The center column is really about what materials the teacher is going to need to conduct this if they're going to do it remotely. So some districts are allowing teachers to come in and work in their building and where the kits are, and that's great. You can just have the stuff there. But if you're in a situation where you can go in for a period of time, get materials, and bring them to a remote location, this is kind of the shopping list for teachers to get so you can conduct those at home or other locations. And then finally, this third column is really about if districts are providing students with materials, recommendations to that end. Sometimes it's not, it might not be safe to send things home, or sometimes it might not be a good use of resources to send those things home. But when we put things in this column, we're assuming that they're probably not going to come back. So we are a little specific about what it is that we're putting in that. In some cases, it's not recommended just due to the resources that are there. And then this last column over here, asynchronous, we'll get into in a little bit. But I want to kind of pause this for a second, and I'm going to turn this over to Deanna, and she's going to show you a little bit of what synchronous instruction might look like using some of these resources with the air and weather module. So I'm going to...
You can leave that for a second.
You bet.
Hello. Good morning. Good afternoon. I know you're from, you all are coming from all parts of the globe, and we're so happy that you joined us. I am actually joining you from Oakland, California. This is our home office / FOSS studio. And just as I've said this in other webinars, that we've been so inspired by teachers and professional learning providers that have done this sort of thing and just trying to have fun with it and help to show ways to engage students. So we're every time doing something a little different. And so just invite you to come along with me, and we're going to explore some ways that we can do synchronous learning with the air and weather module, which one of my favorites. I taught first grade for a long time, and this was one of my favorites to teach students. I think it's also really appropriate for this type of instruction, because students obviously can just go, well, hopefully they can go outside or they can look out their windows. Weather is just something that's very accessible for all of us, and it's engaging. So actually, Brian, you can stop sharing. There we go. So hopefully you can all see me better, because I will be doing some activities. I'm just using my laptop. I just pushed it back a little and put up a little table. So I know people were asking about how we set this up. So it's just my laptop camera right now that I'm using. So hopefully you'll be able to see things. So to begin with, we would, as Brian said, there's these three, we want to focus on three kind of components of a synchronous lesson. And that first one was the introduction. So I might have students look out the window, or just if you don't have a window available, just think about what the sky looks like, and have you noticed things changing in the sky? Just give you a moment to gaze out. What's going on outside where you are? It's nighttime, it might be kind of hard, but maybe you could find the moon. All right. Well, one of the things that we might observe outside is that you might see some wind, or you might see some evidence of air. And that's what we're going to explore today. And we're going to start with a bag of objects. So I'm just going to walk you through what's in the bag. We have a balloon, and I have back here equipment cards. So this is, for those of you maybe new, these are available on FOSS Web. You can print them out or use them digitally, but a good resource, especially if you have English learners that you want to make sure they're using these equipment words. So we have a balloon, I have a piece of paper, I have a cotton ball, I have a straw that I cut, I have a plastic foam ball. So glad I actually have these at home, because I have not been at work for months. And we go on walks every day, and I actually found, instead of the red feathers that come in the kit, I actually found a turkey feather. There's lots of these around where we live. So these are the objects. Oh, and we have a balloon pump, which is a lot of fun. So glad I had that at home. And so one thing we ask students is there anything else here? So what do you think students say? If you are next to your chat, why don't you write in the chat, what do you think, what else is in here? Most of the time students say, nothing. Yes, I see lots of people saying nothing.
Nada.
Nada. And actually, there is something in here. There's a little bit of air. We might compare that to a bag that actually I puffed up with air. And this is kind of our first look at the fact that air takes up space. You can't see it, but it's there. So, in our explorations with these objects, we can use this straw to see if we can make things move. I can use the pump, and I can fill up this balloon with air. Ooh, that was fun. And so this is something that hopefully we can either send home to students so they can do that, or they're really easy accessible materials that I would tell students later to explore. Now we thought, well, let's have some fun. Let's take advantage of the fact that we're doing this synchronously. What might we do to engage students a little bit more with this idea of air moving? So I happen to have this little fan. We don't have much need for it in the Bay Area, so we just have this teeny little rickety fan, but it does work. I'm going to put it on. And I can feel evidence of air moving here. So we were originally playing around with putting objects here and seeing what happened, but they, of course, flew all over the place. And I thought, well, that wouldn't be easy for students to see. So we made this little contraption. It's just a tube made out of page protectors, because that's all I had around here. And I made a little handle with a hanger so that I could hold on to it. And hopefully you'll be able to see this. So I'm going to drop this. If you've ever been to Exploratorium, this is one of those cool things they have there. I'm going to drop the ball in. And thumbs up if you can use your participant. Thumbs up if you can see that. I thought that was pretty cool. And if you can see close up, it's actually spinning around. So, evidence here that air, there's something going up in that tube and making that move. And I could even try this cotton ball. Hold it up there and ooh, boom, make that move. And I bet this will go much faster. Let's see what happens. There. So, anyway, if student, actually, you probably want to make sure that students are careful with this and do this only with a parent around or another responsible adult. But again, I found it's a great way to play around with this idea of air and moving air. All right, so next I want to introduce some vocabulary. So we have our word cards. And we would do just a little sense making. So that was, did the introduction, a little activity, and then we want students to use this vocabulary, right? And we want to make sure we're still introducing it in context. So our focus question was, what can air do? And we've been thinking about air. Put that in my pocket chart. And we now know that air is matter. Right? We had some evidence that it actually takes up space, that it's something, right? Just like liquids and solids, air is a gas. It's invisible, but it's there. And we have evidence by blowing on it, we can make things move. So I would ask students, for the next time we get together, to try something out, and maybe I'd even do it now. I'd say, if you don't have a straw, roll up a piece of paper, make a straw, because I know nowadays, at least in California, we're not using plastic straws, and maybe find some tissue paper, something easy to make move, right? And then maybe I'd ask them to use a sentence frame, focusing, we want to focus on cross-cutting concepts. So when I blow on the straw, then the tissue paper moves. So that might be something we use. All right, well, I know I could go on and on. This is really fun for me, but I'm going to stop here and turn it back to Brian.
All right, so bear with me on this. I'm gonna back over here.
While he's doing that, Brian is going to talk a little bit about, so that was synchronous, and he's going to talk a little bit about distance, what this lesson looks like in distance, in-person learning or asynchronous learning. I'm learning these terms.
Yes. So one of the things that is available is sometimes it might be helpful for us to show short sections of video clips, whether they be to provide instructions to students or whether it be to kind of model a particular thing that we want students to observe. So we could do something, we could show a portion of these if we want to have students work with these materials at home, and this kind of goes through, and we could use this to introduce them to the materials they're going to be working with. So we are working on putting together some videos that can support instruction in slightly different ways. Another resource that we have available, and this is meant a little bit more for some asynchronous use, is here's an example of something that might be done at home. And this could be sent home after they've done a particular thing synchronously, or depending upon the homeschool connection, it might be something that they do asynchronously first and then is discussed synchronously later. So these types of things are really meant to engage students in thinking critically about science. So just pause for a moment. I'm going to check in with our team and thinking about what Deanna just did and thinking about the instruction that you're going to be doing this fall. I saw a lot of ideas come up in the chat about different ways that you can kind of tinker with this to make it work in your particular scenario. So I'm just going to pause. This might be a good time to kind of jot down a few notes, and then I'll get back to the navigation matrix and talk a little bit more about some other resources. Okay, so absolutely adorable kitten there. This picture is actually in Sound and Light module. It's in, I think, investigation 3 or 4 about reflections. So it's, sometimes we can engage in visuals and get a lot of good observations on that as well. So I want to come back to this this navigation matrix, and I know it might be challenging to look at right now. These are coming. I did hear from the group. Let me see if I can get this back up. Should be okay now. This is a work in progress, as I said earlier. So there are some things that we are going to make sure that we have kind of in place at the start of this, and then we are going to kind of continually add to these as we continue. One of the big goals that we have here is to really try to get as many resources as we can for investigations 1 and 2 out to you as quickly as we possibly can. So it's the idea that this might not be perfect initially, but it will soon, we hope. But we are going to try to do as much as we can as we go through. So you can see that Deanna used a number of things from this particular column, and she also referred to kind of the instruction that is in the modified instruction column, as well as kind of glancing over here at the asynchronous column. And we'll get a little bit more into some of these asynchronous resources here in a second. And I do hear from the chat that everybody wants to know when these will be out. So we will get to that information in a little bit, but Deanna's gonna do a little more work with some parachutes here so you can see a little bit different approach to this particular lesson. So I'm going to turn this back to Deanna.
All right. Whew. So now we're moving on to part 2 of the air and weather. And again, I'm just giving you kind of little snippets of some things that we've been thinking about and hearing from other teachers, and would still love to hear more. If you have ideas, I've seen some things in the chat that are great. So we want to look at parachutes, and I am going to share my screen. Let me get the right one here. All right, great. So so that first lesson I just did it using my laptop. This one I'm going to use, I want to just showcase some of the teaching slides. If you haven't used those, I think these are really great for helping students, especially you could even put together these for students to do asynchronously. Oops, you should go forward instead of backwards. Okay, so in this one, this is the engineering piece that goes with with this investigation, and students are given a scenario. Now for us here in California in the West, we are entering into wildfire season, so this is actually quite topical for us. But the scenario is that firefighters need to get supplies into an area. And so if they just drop stuff from an airplane, boom, right? Things are gonna fall and break and they're not gonna be any use. So what can we do to solve that problem? So I'm gonna ask you, I would ask students to unmute, but I'm gonna ask you all to, in the chat, what do you think students would say? How could they solve this problem of getting supplies from an airplane into a remote area in a forest? All right, I see parachutes. What a great idea. So what is a parachute? This might be a new word for students. So we have actually suggested, and this is part of the regular investigation, is to show students a video of, oops, I'm going to actually go and switch over to the streaming video. So this is available on FOSS Web under streaming video. And I'm going to just play, and actually this reminded me of what just happened a few days ago when the SpaceX Dragon re-entered Earth and landed, and they used a parachute. So that might be something that students remember. So this is just a quick little shot of, oh, and there we go. This is of course an older version, but there's a nice example of parachutes. So giving students a bit of background knowledge if that's something new. All right, so back to our slides. So here we'd have students think about how does a parachute work? And I, of course, would have students talking about that. This would be a discussion. And I'm just gonna go through here. And then we set this up as an engineering challenge, right? So, and this works really well, I think, for synchronous or distance learning because the materials are super easy, right? So these are the things that we're going to use. We're going to actually introduce this word of a canopy, and we're going to use just a napkin for that. And one thing that we're starting, and this is literally just a few days ago that we had access to these clips, but something that you will have access to is using some of the teacher prep videos. So I'm going to just show what that might look like. Sorry, I'm just going really quickly here, but I want to show you. So you could actually show this and so students can clearly see how to set up their parachute. This could also be sent home asynchronously so that they could do this later. And what I was also just thinking about, it's like, so this would be so easy to just modify if you didn't have they just use tape. And it's a very accessible activity for students. Okay, so I'm going to just go right to, let's see, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second here because I actually made one. And I have a fan, so we can actually get a close-up look. Because it's not just a fun activity. I think one thing we want to stress, and this is always the case, right, is we always have fun doing FOSS, always, but the learning happens when we make sense. So we want to make sure that we're not just leaving it at, oh, it's a fun activity, it's an engineering activity, how did we solve the problem? But what are we learning from this? What are we learning about air, right? And so giving students that opportunity to talk about what they observe, how is the air interacting with the parachute, right? All right, so I'm going to shut that off. And I'm going to just quickly model. I'm going to change my camera. Let's see, let me stop sharing. Am I still sharing? No, okay. I am going to switch to a little streaming camera that we have so I can get a close-up. And last time we did this, some teachers were saying, oh, I could bring my doc cam home and use that. So, and this is a very kind of inexpensive camera. But I would like to be able to still do pictorials with my students, right? So drawing out, we made a parachute, right? This was our canopy. And to really think about what are we learning here? What are we learning about air? So we know that as the parachute was falling down, it's pushing air as it's falling, right? But that air is pushing up, right? Because even in this room, it's all full of air. So that air pushing up, sorry, this is so sloppy, but I'm just doing it quickly. And this is how we introduce air resistance. And this would be when we would be having a discussion. I would be having students help me create this and doing that class notebook or model or whatever strategy you're using, but you want to include students in that sense-making piece. All right, I'm going to stop it then there. I actually want to switch cameras back so I can, and I'm going to share my screen. Boy, this technology. Back to the slides. And so now we want students to write in their notebooks, right? So I would have, if you can do this, if you can get your districts to send home, if anything, you know, notebooks so that they can, especially at this grade, because we don't want them spending all their time on the computer. They should be able to be writing in their notebooks about their observations and continue making sense that way. All right, and oh, I forgot to show some of these videos actually. So here's another example. If you don't want to make one yourself, you can have students observe this, again, just in helping with that sense making. And then we'd encourage students to take their parachutes outside. What a great way to get them outside and to see how they interact with the wind outdoors. And then come back and we can have our discussion and students can finish off writing in their notebooks. All right, I'm going to turn it back to Brian.
Okay, so thank you. I think, Deanna, I'm going to share my screen. So before we go too far, I know there was like 86,000 questions about Deanna's setup. There is some information in the recommendations document that I shared with you earlier about tech setup that goes into a lot of details about how to set that up and manage that. So it is in there. If you do have questions on that, you can ask following that. And we do also have a number of people on staff that have used a number of these in professional learning. So we do have some level of expertise on this, but it's best to check with your district person. We talked about those tools early. We at FOSS don't have the capacity to know what is compatible with your system and how things are locked down in your district in terms of firewalls and those types of things. So it's difficult for us to make specific recommendations on that. But the district person around technology is a great person to start with on that. But I'm sure they've got 86,001 questions about those things. So just a little bit more on this. As you can see, Deanna kind of goes through and what is possible with this is doing what a lot of districts are calling a blended approach. So you're doing a combination of synchronous learning and asynchronous learning. And so some asynchronous things that FOSS has that we've shared a little bit already are some of those homeschool connections, as well as readings and some of the videos that you saw. But Deanna's going to share a little bit more about some additional ones. But as we're going through this, the reason why we're developing all of these tools is to really make sure the engagement stays at the level it needs to stay at. While the method of the instruction might be different than it was previously, we still need to engage students in making sense of their experience, whether experience is direct hands-on, or whether it's done through some other experiences. We still need to process that with students. So as we go through these tools, keep that in the back of your mind of how can we use these tools to engage students in thinking about science. So I'm going to have Deanna, I'll kind of go through and click these. And Deanna, if you want to talk a little bit about those, I'll steer the PowerPoint here.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, you're gonna, you can actually stop sharing. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to just skip over to, all right. So you should still be able to see this. That's fine. We're going to skip over to investigation 2. And that's all about observing the sky and weather. And what better way to do, I didn't have my calendar with me, but I just made one here on the, oops, you know what? Let me get closer here so you can see it. Oopsie. Put this on. Okay. So here, just on a whiteboard, I made the calendar, printed out some of the weather. So for us today, it was overcast. But this is just a nice way, a nice familiar way, especially in the beginning for students to get comfortable, right? Talk about the weather. Very accessible for students to observe, talk about, and then getting into things like temperature, and they can make their own thermometer. That's a nice asynchronous activity that they can do. And then that can get, temperature can start getting added here, as can all the other pieces that they record normally through this investigation, like daylight hours and the wind and that sort of thing. So I'm not going to get too much into that. I think you all know about that. But I wanted to use this as an opportunity. I'm going to, all right, here we go. And show you something quite adorable that is, oops, let me share my screen. Okay. And this is, wanted to just show you how to use multimedia and how to support families in doing that with their children. So Jess did this video. Jess Panchos, our middle school director, she did this with her daughter who's going into kindergarten. So we wanted to just show you what it looks like at the other end from the side of the student and their family.
Okay, here's Violet. She's gonna give it a try. Are you ready?
Hi guys, I don't really know what this is.
Okay, let's take a look. We're gonna talk it out. Okay, so this says, do you want to try to read it?
What time
Temperature
does the
thermometer
thermometer show?
Good job. Okay, now you're gonna read the temperature over here like we just talked about. You get to figure out, here's the button that says zoom in. This one says zoom out. And you're gonna figure out the number.
Okay, so it's almost at 32, but just a little low.
You know what? I think 32 is a great idea. So let's put it over here. Can you click on the numbers for 32? What do you think 32 starts with?
30.
It starts with a 3. And then the next number is 2. That's 32. Okay, now this part we didn't really talk about. So which of these letters, C or F, which one do you see down here?
C.
Good job, check the box there. This box, huh? There you go. Okay, and then it says check it. You find out if you got it right. That's it, 32 degrees, good job. Okay, hit this button, that's it.
All right, so that gives you an idea. This is actually a 3rd grade multimedia activity that we're going to put into the first grade and just testing it out. And if Violet can do it, well, she's a pretty smart kid, but we think that with some assistance, first graders can use this. And I was just reflecting on how, wow, they're doing literacy and math as well as science here. All right, so I can see our time is running out, but while I'm here, I wanted to show you, let me move this out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. Using the ebook as well, which is a great resource, and I'm sure you all have been using these. So getting back to weather, we might, again, it's great to have students reading this at home, but we want to make sure, as Brian was saying, that discussion is so key. That's where that learning happens. So we want to make sure to have time for students to come back and meet with the teacher and talk about their reading. So I might do something like go through here and have students wave if they've observed this type of weather in the last week or so. So if you want, you could actually, if you know how to do it, you click participant, you could actually raise your hand. So raise your hand if you've seen this type of weather. Oh, I'm not logged in. Okay. If you've had this type of weather in the last week, I know some in the East Coast might have, or I've seen this kind of weather. I've seen fog. These time-lapse videos are really great for discussion. Anyway, I'm gonna just stop here because I can see I'm running out of time. And
Deanna, can you show the brassica?
oh yes, the brassica, sorry.
Questions about life science.
Yeah, sorry. So this is a slide. These are what are they called? Slideshows that are new, that are part of. This is from Insects and Plants. So if students aren't able to, I mean, it'd be great if they could plant seeds and observe that. But if they can't, they could actually access these, and you can use these with students to kind of look at change over time and have those discussions. You know, look at some close-ups if you want to have kind of a summary of what's going on. For some reason, that's not working right. Oh, there we go. So these are a great resource, and there's the milkweed bugs and some other insects and some interesting things for students to observe and discuss. So that's another nice multimedia or another resource that you can use to engage students. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and let Brian take us home.
I feel like I've been at home for
Actually,
quite some time. I feel like I need to get out of my home. But as Deanna was saying, there's a number of asynchronous resources that are here that are going to kind of, depending upon your module that you're working with, depending upon the approach that you and your district are taking, whether or not you're doing multiple sessions synchronously or you're doing, I think there's a district that reached out to us that talked about doing a synchronous session for 30 minutes and then an asynchronous session or two throughout the week. So when they start to look at things like the navigation matrix, you can put some things together. You can kind of take a little bit from this column, a little bit from this column. Those are not meant to, it is not meant that you do every single thing in the row. It's a menu of things that you can select from. So one question that does come up is, what does the student side look like? So this is the student side here for air and weather. This is a placeholder for right now. So when students log in onto their account, they're going to see investigations 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you're going to need to provide them some directions to click on investigation 1. And when they click on investigation 1, all the asynchronous resources will be there for them to use. So you can direct them to that. They can go through, they can click on it. For some things we can't link to directly. For example, the ebook, we can't link to each article directly. So we'll link to the table of contents. So they'll need a little direction on how to get to the article that they need to read. But those will be kind of housed or located in one particular page on here for the student side of things. So that is coming. And I think the last big question that was asked, that I'm going to get to, and we can go to this final reflection, was about the schedule of release. So I think a number of you said that you received emails that kind of had the anticipated schedule of release. We're also posting that in the chat. I believe we're getting that up there now. But we will also make sure that we put it in the email as when we send out the webinar recording. In general terms, we are going to have things come online on Fridays. So get in the habit of every Friday kind of coming back and checking out what's new. It's a good habit to get into. We will have a few resources for K2 going up this Friday, and then just more will come online every Friday as we can. A few general questions that I know we're going to get answered. Can we work on this particular module next because I'm doing X, Y, and Z? Everybody's already asked us to work on their module first already. So we have 18 modules that need to be done before any of the other 18 modules. So somehow we're just going to work on all of them as fast as we can, and we will get those up as quickly as we can. I think many of us are putting in 10-hour days here and trying to get ready for our kids and going to school. So we are with you, we understand, and we are working as hard as we can to get those up. And if we could find a way to work harder, we would be doing that already. So with that, just kind of thinking in closing about all of these resources. And as you kind of go through the fall, one of the questions to kind of keep in the back of your mind is just thinking through in what ways can we engage students, especially during this time, especially K2. I have a feeling, I mean, even my two, they're middle school and high school, are looking for their teachers to engage them. And they're asking for engagement. So when we are using these resources, we're really trying to find the best ways to engage students, given what we can do right now. So you can do amazing things with simple photos. You can do amazing things with simple experiences. Kids can do amazing things with simple materials. So keep checking back. And with that, I think I'm going to ask for, I got to put this up for just legal reasons. And finally, just a little bit of feedback. There are 3 questions that are on here, and I believe the link is going up into chat, but that last question is actually really important. What other resources would you like? We are continually kind of monitoring the needs of districts as they come in, and we're trying to answer as many of the questions from as many of the people as we possibly can. If you could take some time, fill that in. I'd like to thank you all for coming and being with us, and I'd like to thank Deanna. Deanna did an amazing job. I'm so grateful if you saw me last week do this by myself. You probably appreciate Deanna being here just as much as I do, so thank you. And I, for whatever reason, I'm standing in front of an amazing team of people that are helping out the chats and kind of behind the scenes to put all of this stuff together. So thank you immensely to the team that's helping out. And again, thank you to all the teachers and educators that are out there that are trying to do this, because this is what we need. This is what our kids need. This is what we need to move back into some joy and good learning experiences. So thank you for your time, and just jot those down and keep on going.